I'm Leon. Welcome to my addiction. This will be a series of videos on a rallycross car build, and I hope we have as much fun doing it and videoing it, and you enjoy it and you learn something from it and all of that. That's the idea. There's a lot of videos out there. I like them. There's build videos where you just take junk in a junkyard, hammer it together, and then see how quickly you can blow it all back up. Usually not long. Then there's the type of videos where you just buy parts and bolt them on. If you don't have the tools, the time, and the skills and experience to fab your own, then you need to go that way. But you do have to open your checkbook. And you hope that the parts are engineered well, are built well, and actually fit. Many times you're back to the fabrication because you got to fit them on the car. It means more work. So hoping that isn't the case here. Anyway, this is going to be a series in the middle. There's also builds where you have extreme fabrication, where you have like Project Binky, Project Mosquito. Fanatic Builds has a GT6, put an LS in it. These guys go to great lengths of fabrication with minimal tools. It's very amazing. But their cars take years and years to get to a point where they can drive them, if ever. I've got 6 months, and this has got to be on the race course. So that's not going to work. I've been building cars most of my life, cars, motorcycles, show cars, trucks, you name it. And I love doing this. If it produces torque or recoil, I'm in. If it involves a bat, a stick, or a ball, don't really care. Anyway, also I've been an engineer most of my life, mechanical, electronic, electrical, doing industrial, and that includes the CNC machines, mostly. So, yeah, I can do this. This isn't my first go-round. Done lots of other projects, and I'll get into that in a moment. We do have a budget on this build. It's not an open checkbook. We're shooting for under $6 grand, and we've got a roller already, so we're a large part of the way there. If it makes it to 10, it's going to hurt a lot. So that's where we're at on that part of it. Past builds, like I said, I've done a lot of rallycross cars. I started out doing show cars, that kind of thing. And started out with, I'll show a picture there, a Triumph Spitfire with a Toyota engine tranny and side draft McCoonies and nitrous oxide, because yeah, you know, gotta have that. And then I did a 502 blown Camaro, made Hot Rod Mag as a feature car, spent crazy money on that. And then I got into the rallycross. A Rabbit turned into a Golf, and that got rolled and turned into a Rabbit pickup. I'll show a picture of that. That was a pretty extensive build. Took all of it from the floor to the front end out of the Mark II and sandwiched it into the Mark I VW Rabbit pickup body with a lot of tube fabrication. If you're interested in that, there's a build thread on VW Vortex in their build threads called Rally Caddy, and that one, a lot goes on there. Anyway, so after all of that, I got into a little bit more rallycross, and I will tell you, if you want to have some fun, get your fun meter to 11, and you're thinking about it, don't wait. Get out there. It's loads of fun. You don't have to spend a ton of money. But so my latest build is sitting right here. Let me show you that. Introducing FRANKARU, as it says down there. And as you can guess, it's a Frankenstein. It's a 914 Porsche with a Subaru EJ20 in the middle and a Subaru Transaxle in the back. It's very good, lots of fun, and it won the national championship the last 2 years in a row. So yeah, it's the car to beat right now, and it's getting more. This is on a build thread on Grassroots Motorsports. In their build threads, listed as Baja Porscheru, B-A-H-A Porscheru, like it says on the door. And if you're interested in that, it's going to be an ongoing project as well. So I'm doing two at the same time. That's the best thing to do in retirement, right? So this is getting some upgrades very soon, and you'll see that on that build thread. So anyway, other than that, yeah, let's get you over to another little project. This here is my 1985 Celica GTS. My dad bought it new. It has been stroked to a 2.6. LC Engineering, extrude honed intake, and a turbo. That is a GT30 that is running 22 pounds of boost, and dyno's out at about 300 horse. You can't get any more because the cylinder head just gives out at that point. It's got all fabricated suspension and brakes, 6-piston Willwoods, conies. Pretty much everything had to be made because they don't make a kit for this. So this was a lot of fun. It has also run at Road Atlanta, Barber, Atlanta Motorsports Park, and in time trials it won a divisional championship. So it's loads of fun. Full leather interior, full everything. I can drive it every day if I want to, but I don't. I wish I did. What we have here is a 1996 Subaru Impreza with a big hole in the front where a motor's supposed to be. This car belonged to a club member. It rallied it, and it got some problems. It had an electrical fire in the dash at Nationals one year. Later he got medical conditions, wouldn't let him keep racing. He sold it to another fellow in the club. It wasn't too much later, the motor expired, and after some time my friend found another motor for it. This is a 2006 WRX motor with a wiring harness and a computer. The idea was to just slam that in here and go. Well, that didn't work out. That's why we're here. And if we did get another motor like this, we thought, well, you know, that's pretty simple, bolt that in, but then it wouldn't be a Frankenstein. And with a blank slate like this, it's just too tempting. We got to have some more fun. So the search was on for something to put in there. Well, there's a couple parameters. I talked to some good friends. They had a lot of ideas. Tons of motors were considered, just a lot of things. And I've got some friends that have some pretty wild imaginations. Right, John? Anyway, so with that, we looked into a whole lot of variables. And the first thing is it's got to have more power. Because why would you do this without adding more power, right? More power. Secondly, more torque. And we want that torque right away. So that means that turbo lag, we may have to go naturally aspirated. That might be preferable. And if you're going to do that, you're going to probably need more displacement because there's no replacement for displacement. And that would help in the torque and power department, okay? Cost. We do have a budget, like I said. This thing can't be just to the moon. And so it's got to be something affordable. Can't be exotic. We could get another Porsche motor and put it in here, and then we'd have Porsche version 2 reverse, you know. But no, that's not going to work. We need something that's attainable, available, and all of that. The next thing is it's got to be reliable, that it can run good and hard and strong. It's expandable for more horsepower later. And the worst thing of all, it's got to fit in there. Now, I like an LS as much as the next guy. Love them. LS, LT, they're great. And they're fantastic as far as power to money spent. Great. I've seen them put in Subarus. The problem is they don't really fit. They hang out the front end of the car and up through the hood, and it looks kind of like a rat-fink car. Cool, but not very good for what I'm after. I want to package it much better and make it look more like it's supposed to. Secondly, I don't want all that weight out front. On these transaxles, the engine mounts in front of the drive axles, which means all the weight is hanging past the front of the front axle of the car. So that's another issue, weight. Going to look for something aluminum for sure. So we have some parameters like that we have to meet. And the question was, what are we going to pick? So after a lot of deliberation and a lot of thinking, we got something under the cover over here you might enjoy. Let me go ahead and open that up. Now, before I open it up, I know you're going to say, why didn't you pick this motor or that motor? What did you pick that for? Well, I probably don't think like you do, first of all. Second of all, you don't think like I do. And thirdly, I may have even thought of that. And even if I did, I might have ruled it out because of some other reasons that I don't like it, or there's some problems down the road with that I think would be another issue. So because of that, that's going to happen a lot in this build. We got our decision made and found something that fits the bill. Here we go. I show you a General Motors 4.3 aluminum V6. This came in 2014 and up, pickup trucks and vans, and it's a great motor. This motor is a V6 based on the LT V8s, so she's a beaut. They produce good horsepower, they're expandable down the road, they're well supported, all of the LS and LT parts bolt right onto it. It's a nice little beast. If you watch the Scoggin Dickey videos, they take this thing and put a cam in it and a tune, and you're up to 370 horse. Boosted, they took it all the way up close to 700 horse. And held together, didn't blow up, amazing. And so it's shorter than the V8 version, which is what we were after here, so that we have a chance. it should fit in there. It's going to take some work, trust me. There's going to be a lot of measuring tapes and micrometers and all that sort of thing. So there's going to be a lot of fitting and fighting and fabrication to get this in there. But it's doable. This cost $2,000 with the computer. Unfortunately, the harness was butchered. I got to get a harness for it. But these things are pretty easy to rework the harness if you watch the other videos online, and this is going to rock. We're going to be putting out with that near 400 horsepower. On E85 they do even better, so more room up there. And so this is going to be the motor that we're going to try and get in there. So now the big question is, what's it going to take to get it in, right? Did I mention it was $2,000? So there's a good part of our budget. All right, let's see about the dimensions, shall we? Okay. As you can see, this bell housing is about a foot from the firewall. Not like your standard GMs and others. It's quite a ways away. And it would be nice if that was way back there, but it's not. Gonna have to do something about that. So how much room do we have between here and here, right? Well, measuring from the face of the bell housing to the back of the radiator bulkhead, I've got 21 inches. How long's the motor? Well, the bell housing to the front of the pulley on the motor is 23 inches. I need a couple of inches. Can I shove the transmission back a couple inches? The answer is, yeah, actually I can a little. The big limit is the drive shafts. These half shafts up front can only take so much misalignment before you start binding the CV joints. After moving them and looking at them, it looks like, yeah, I can get a little over 2 inches. So if I take 2 inches, might make it. That will compromise their strength slightly on the joints, but I believe we can work with it. And if I have to, well, I had to make custom ones for FRANKARU, so, you know, that's doable. The bolts on the back of this are 4 bolts on the cross member, and there's 6 in the body, and they're 2 inches apart roughly, so I can just slide it back to the next set of holes. And this should give me some room. But there's a reverse on that. Turns out, you know, I've got to have a plate, a motor plate, to adapt this to that. Well, what that means is that's going to take about 1 inch. So I'm going to have to trim in the front here about 1 inch, and I'll have to reinforce that and rework that, but that's part of that fabrication we were talking about. And that's where we got to start. So the next thing to do is to get this transmission back 2 inches and start dropping the motor down here and see just how many things we're going to have to do. So that's where we're going to go next. The actual build begins now. Okay, this is where the fun begins. We've got to get this transmission moved back 2 inches to do our mock-up and help drop our engine in and start seeing what kind of a mess we're into. I've done a couple of things here. I hooked the axles back up so when I push it back, I can make sure that I don't interfere with the drive shaft joints binding. I put the starter in with a nut so I can make sure I've got room to get it out. Looks like we've got plenty of room here, even back 2 inches. So that should be okay, but you've got to check these things. The clutch master is here. It's got to clear the firewall. It's going to be fairly close, but looks like we're okay with our 2 inches as well. So all of that is great. This little dog bone is going to go away. The reason is we won't need it. This is used to support the cantilever load of the engine hanging off the front of this transmission. The motor mounts are way back here, so there's so much cantilever load that they added this to help support the engine hanging out the front. But because of our mount, won't need it. This mount will go away a little later, and this mount will probably go away as well, because I'm pretty sure there's something that's going to be going in the same place. So I know what it is, you'll see. But anything we get rid of, again, that's also weight. And Lord knows we got to do something about weight all the time. So the first thing is to hold this up. The question is, how high? Well, it just so happens that for the clutch to clear and everything to clear without putting the whole motor in and going through all that again, is I know there's a little something here. There's a little inspection cover. This little guy. This goes along the bottom underneath here and covers the bottom of the flywheel and clutch area. Kind of an inspection cover, but obviously it's right on top of the steering rack. You can't inspect much. These are hell to get in and out. People usually cuss them, throw them away. They never see the light of day again. So that's the problem, though. I have raced in mud with FRANKARU and packed the clutch with mud and it quit working. So that's a bad thing. So we're going to have to make sure this fits underneath. It doesn't take much, just a little. but we need to know where that is so we can set our driveline angle. Because the deal here is that this height and the back height of the transmission are relative to the driveline angle on the drive shaft. If we have to raise and lower this, which I'm betting we're going to have to lower this, we'll have to lower the back the same amount in order to keep the driveline angles correct. So that's real important. So how am I going to do that? How am I going to support that? Well, blocks of wood, chains, ropes, forget it. Remember what I said about tools? Here we go. Engine support bar. These are used on front wheel drive cars largely when you're pulling engines or transmissions out. It'll support the engine when the tranny's out or the tranny when the engine is out. Very useful piece of hardware. I paid good money for it. I'm going to use it. So let me go ahead and string this thing up. I'll go ahead and drop these in. And there's a little chain comes with it. I can snake this through without taking too long. Put in here. And there we go. Almost. Okay. So now this is why I'm not removing that mount immediately, because it comes in handy for what I'm having to do at the moment. And we'll take up the slack on this. Do some of that, some of this. Now, the other thing is where this bar is located, if I have to take it down, is important. So what I'm going to do is mark where I've got it sitting. And that's going to be on each side, right here, and over here inside the fender. Just put a couple little marks down there. That way, if I have to pull it out, I can put it back in the same place. As the transmission moves back, this height is going to change ever so slightly. But as I said, it is ever so slightly, so it's not going to screw up our measurements. And if I'm off by a fraction of an inch, it's not going to affect my driveline angle enough. So the first thing now is to go ahead and get the weight off of this and see if I can slide that little cover in. So we'll start picking it up a little as I turn this. A little on the other side. A little tricky with these this close together, but we'll get it. Okay, I'll get into time lapse a little later. I got to figure out how to do that. All right, and this one over here a little more, and I'm getting a little clearance under there. Okay, check the fit. Oh yeah, that slides in. So that's about where we're going to have to be. There's just a little bit of clearance where this could be pulled out. And as I said, this is about a 1/4 inch underneath here, but that's not what we're worried about. We're going to take a dimension, and that's going to be from the bottom of this bar, which isn't going to change if it's positioned here, to the center line of the input shaft. That looks to be 20 and a half. Oh, that's handy. 20 and a half. So for reference, I could go back and watch the video, but I'm going to write it here. 20.5. And that's going to be input shaft center line, CL. So that tells us how high we have to be. Okay? So now, the next thing I have to do is get underneath and push this all back. This will hold everything in place while I do it, so I didn't have to have jacks underneath and everything. Very handy. Okay, time to put the lift. Here we are on the underside. We've got our cross member, and we've got our 4 bolts. We've got an extra hole here, it's spaced back just about right. Just going to move this back 1 set of holes, which will get us our 2 inches. Just a smidge more, I might have to work with that. We also have our shift linkage up here and our drive shaft. Obviously the drive shaft is going to have to be shortened and rebalanced. Not too big a deal. So that's the first thing that has to come out, and then the shift linkage and shifter will have to come out. Then I can loosen the tranny and bring it back. I will have to support this, so I'll be bringing a jack in for that while I do that, so I don't drop it on my head. Speaking of my head, old habits die hard. I've whacked my head so many times on this lift and on cars and tires and wheels, I bleed a lot. So yeah, protection is good. Safety, people. I've had enough injuries in my life, so there you go. Anyway, let me go ahead and start pulling this drive shaft out. I'll try time lapse a little later. This shouldn't take long. Got a cover back here. But not least, there we go. Okay, that gives us access to the rear U-joint. So now, need a couple of 12 millimeters and pull off that rear U-joint. Okay. Start, let's see, another wrench right here. There we go. Okay. Get this guy. Nice when things aren't completely rusty like they were in the north where I grew up. Okay, that's one. Put that in the pocket temporarily. And we'll get to number 2. This car does not have a limited slip in the back, but probably will, considering the horsepower. It's going to have limited slips maybe all around. Let's see here, almost there. That's 2. And you'll notice it's a 2-piece drive shaft, so it has a center bearing. And that will maintain exactly where it is. We do not have to mess with that. But we do care about our driveline angles. That's 3 and 1 to go. Helps to hit these all with lube first and loosen them up, so I don't embarrass myself rounding off bolt heads while I'm trying to show you this. Just saves time. Okay, and that is that. That gets the rear out. All right, time for the middle. Back to the impact. What do you want to bet this is going to want to dribble all over the floor, and I don't have a pan handy. Generally, I try to put the bolts back where they came from for the time being. That sure saves looking for them later and having to bag them and tag them and all the rest of that. But, as others have said, if you have to take things out like this much, you do want to bag and tag things. I am going to do that with the bolts in my pocket and with the bolts from that cover. They will get bagged and tagged. So. Next thing, I'm going to go ahead and stop for a moment and drain the transmission so I don't make a mess. And I'll come right back to you and pull this shift linkage, okay? Okay, so now, drain the transmission. I can get this out of the way. And what came out was extremely clean. Looked almost like brand new. So that's very good. Nothing to worry about there. This is the rare and desirable 444 transmission with the good gear ratios. So that's a plus. This car came with a lot of good things. So let me pop this out the back. There we go. No mess now. And the next thing is going to be that shifter linkage up here. So I'm going to have to undo this and get it out of the way. I'm going to bring my transmission jack in. And I'm just about out of height so I can get everything in here. And so I put a 4x4 on top of the jack, but remember, the drive shafts are attached and we have that tool up top holding the front of the transmission. So I'm just holding up the back of the transmission and I'm going to be rolling it all back. So the first thing now is this guy here. Let me try and get this unhooked. All right. Okay, this is the shifter, so the shifter is going to have to be shortened. This arm and the shift linkage are going to have to be shortened. 2 inches is not tremendous. I think we're going to be just fine with that. Well, it looks like that pin does not come out that way without some more work. And so, I think I may just drop this whole piece on the back of the transmission. That might be easier. But I still have to take it out up here on the floor. So, there is that. Break these loose. And two of one of another. That's great. Well, no, actually not. Those I think stay with. Okay. Oh yeah, there we go. There's a little spring here that preloads things. So that gets that out of the way. Nice. I did put the bolts back in the back for the crossover cover for the drive shafts and the drive shaft bolts. Just seemed easier. Put them back where they came from. Don't you hate gravity? Ah, does it every time. Okay. So now, the question is, there we go. What about the shifter? And I'm not sure what I'm going to have to do up top. That's going to be easier with a socket. So 12. Get our handy helper here. And away we go. No, you don't go. Gotta get the strong arm on it. Okay. That's what I get for not pre-loosening that one. Oh yeah. Nice. Okay. Hope it's not turning on top. It is, of course. Okay. And now we got to have our 12 back on top. These are the things that take so long to make these projects so much enjoyment. Let's see, there we go. Now, how many hands do I have? There we go. Gotcha. Makes these videos longer. Okay. So once I have this out of the way, I want to make sure that I'm not going to hit it when I pull the transmission back. There we go. Okay, grab the nut and the bolt, and that's all out of the way. Okay, put the bolt back. So looking at all of this, see, this comes out of the back here. Let's try to get that out while we're at it. Never know if it's a 13 or a 14, right? There we go. There's a support here for the back of the shifter. So whatever amount I move it back, that's how much I'm going to have to shorten these by. Once again, they're different sizes. I think somebody's been in here before. Yep. Somebody's been in here before. These bolts are all different head sizes. All right. Enjoy my pain and frustration. This isn't the hard part. We just call these character building experiences. That's what you need in life. There we go. Okay. Whether or not this will all fall out or not is unlikely, but it's worth a look-see. All right, it's out of the way for now. And let's
again. There we go. So I'll detach all of this up top and get it out of the way shortly. Yeah, I should be able to push the transmission back and not get in the way of that. All of that's going to come out. Okay, now, the moment we've been waiting for. Let's loosen the transmission mount and let's see if we can push this thing back. There's 4 holes, and I'm going to take the front hole and put it in this hole. There's another hole here that I can actually get inside and put a nut on. So that might work for us. These are actually 2 1/4 inches apart. Can I get that extra 1/4 inch? Boy, I hope so. There's 2. Got it. And there we go. All right. So, 3 different kinds of bolts, and one of them really has bad threads. So, guess what's going to have to be fixed there? All right. So now, can we slide it back? Yes, a little. And we don't know what we're going to run into. Our shifter. Come on. There we go. And back. And back and back and back. There we go. And that looks almost there. Yes. Now, I'm going to put a bolt in that second hole. Remember, this is for mock-up. We're going to have to make this better, but at least we've got something. And this hole here is going to take a little bit. They narrow down just a little bit. Okay, well, with that being the case, I'm going to have to notch this just a little bit with a file. So I'm going to turn off the video for now and come back with it bolted up. Off-camera action, just a little bit of trimming on the holes with the die grinder to slot them, about a 1/16 on each side, and you didn't have to hear the compressor running. And so that was able to be done, bolted up on the back set of holes here, and it's in place. So the next thing now is I pulled the tranny jack out, and now I'm going to go ahead and check for binding on these front axles. I've turned the wheel and I put my hand up here on this joint. I should not feel any crunch or nastiness or binding or stopping, and it is just fine. It's just good. Let's check the other side. Same thing. Yeah, we got good driveline angle. That's about as far as I'm going to be able to go, but I am able to. So this is great. That's a good start. We got a win for once. Anyway, let's see where that goes from there. While I'm at it, I wanted to show you another little something. This car came with a lot of nice things. So let me move the camera and show you quickly here. This car came with adjustable rear control arms on both sides. So it has lower adjustable arms here, 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 and here. Unlock the nuts, turn the center. These are sweet. And it's got a brace bar here. So it has some nice stuff in it. Also, it came with AGX adjustable shocks, front, rear. So we've got some good hardware here, good bones to work with, and I am not complaining. Did not have to spend anything in the budget for that. Yay. Let me take you up front. Okay. So we look pretty good here. We've got the transmission supported. It's back. It's not interfering with anything here. The starter still has a good 1.5 inches to the firewall. No problem there. I've got about a 1/2 inch, about a 1/4 inch to the bleeder on the clutch slave cylinder. So that's going to be close, but it's okay. We're not hitting. So that is all the love we're going to get. So that's a great thing. This cross member though, there's going to be an issue. The steering rack runs in front of the bell housing now instead of under it, and we've got a problem. That engine has a rear sump oil pan, and that is not going to come anywhere near fitting in here. So we know that there's going to be some trimming here. A lot of this cross member, the front half of it, was just to support the engine cradle or the engine motor mounts. So that is not necessary. We can cut all that out should we need to. Don't know if we need to, but its weight, and it's not doing anything for me. It's for supporting the engine. The back part of this cradle supports the lower control arms. So one of the things to keep in mind is if we have to lower all of this, which we probably will, I can unbolt this from the frame, put spacers in, and lower this whole thing down, lowering the rack. I will have to extend the steering arm, but then I can get the clearance I need underneath. The oil pan is going to have to come off the engine, and we're going to be going with a front sump oil pan. They did not make one for the LV motor, as far as I know, but they did make it for the LS and LT in the pickup trucks, four-wheel drive. So being as these parts interchange greatly, I can shorten a pan. And that looks to be like that's going to be a big plus. So the next thing to do now is to get the oil pan off the engine and take a look at the center line to the bottom of the crankshaft and make sure I've got clearance. And then we're going to have to stab this thing in here. So I've drained the oil out, and I'm ready to pull the pan on this. Notice it is a rear sump. The oil filter is actually on the pan. There's also an oil cooler connection point here that has lines that go forward on the vehicle. So these will have to be part of the new setup. Might go to remote oil filter setup. That is done on race cars quite often. Anyway, cast pan, there's two smaller long bolts at the back that go up into the block, and then these others go all the way around the block. There's an oil level sensor in here. May or may not get used. So this has got to come off next. So drop this off, get my clearance, and then start looking at the distance underneath here. Okay. So these oil pans are usually installed without a gasket. They use a block sealant here that works very well. It's a machine-to-machine surface, so that works ideally. You don't want to damage those machine surfaces. So we're going to do our best to separate this without causing a problem using my oil pan separator tool, aka scraper, and a dead blow. And hopefully this will give way without a lot of fight. We will find out. It's going to fight. Came off. Not what I expected, but hey, have a little humor, right? Thought it'd be fun to show you this. This is some kind of oil pan. The oil pickup has an O-ring boss basically here that interfaces with the block, so it doesn't get attached there. It's actually attached to the pan. The whole pickup is. Also, the oil filter and cooler lines in here are inside the pan. There's a separate casting in here that's bolted in. There's a windage tray. There's the level sensor. There's quite a lot going on here. It says made in Mexico. So there you go, folks. That's what's hiding inside. When we get our new pan with a front pickup, all of this has to get replicated. What fun. Okay, the oil pan is off. And while we were at it, I removed the motor mounts on the sides of that motor to make sure they didn't interfere with this cross member. They're about midway of the engine, and I thought it might. And boy, do they weigh a lot. It was good to get rid of them. My next concern was the bottom of the crankshaft counterweights. Would that hang down a lot and interfere with our cross member? Turns out no. From the outside of the counterweight to the center line of the crank is only about 3.5 inches. And taking a look here what we've got available, yeah, we've got more like 6 inches. So we'll have room for the front sump oil pan, and the rear sump will have some room for the oil to go. So that looks like a bonus. We're good there. So the next thing to do is to hang this motor from a hoist and drop it in here and see where we fall as far as the center line. The bell housing leans back a bit where it is, which is normal with the Subaru. But with this, that's going to put the intake up here, and we're going to be working with hood clearance. That's the next concern. So we're going to have to find out just how much I've got to lower this to be able to put the hood on. And so I'll have to pull this at that point, but for the moment, I just want to get the engine on the hoist and lay it in here. I'm about 1/4 inch long to fitting in this cross member up front, so I might just pull the front pulley off of this motor so that we don't have to worry about that, and we can dump it as low as we want. Okay? So that's the next step. Later that day, the moment we've all been waiting for. So later that day, I had to go get some tools.
I thought I had every tool known to man. Most people do think I do. This is not a professional shop. I've just spent most of my years retirement money on tools in the last 40 years. So as a result, I thought I had everything. I didn't. The problem was getting this lower pulley off of the front of the engine. I needed that off because I know I got to do some trimming anyway, and I didn't have a big enough puller. So I called around, and none of my friends that would be home had any. So I need it right now, and now I do have a big enough puller. So that's how the tool set expands universally. Trouble with a hobby, there are no budgets. So anyway, this thing is supposed to be down in here. All the front accessories we know once this thing's down are going to be close but very fittable. So I'm not worried about these, I'm worried about this. And it looks like I've only got it part way in. Not so. This is actually lined up with the crankshaft. The bell housing is even with the bell housing on the motor, a little bit of a gap. But just trying to find out how much of an angle it sits at. And there it is. Yeah, this is going to be serious surgery. There's a lot to come on this. So the thing I have here is I need about, I don't know, 9 inches of drop to get this down in here. And you can't just willy-nilly drop it and not worry about the transmission driveline angles and things. So all of this is going to come into play. It includes the front drive shafts. So I'm looking at a real piece of puzzle here to figure things out. I'm going to go ahead and pull this cross member and steering, and I'm going to put it down where I want it to be, and then I'm going to start looking at everything underneath. So I'll be bracing it all up here and seeing what it takes to get it down there. It's going to happen. It's just going to be one of those engineering challenges I talked about. And everything has mass. By the way, speaking of mass, just to let you know, the hood that was on this car, the steel hood, I weighed it out at 34 pounds. I have an aluminum hood that's only 19 pounds. And they're valuable. I don't want to cut it. I want it to clear, so I don't want to go there. The car weight, I'm sure you're wondering. I weighed the car with the hood, with the bumper on, and everything as it was, and it was 1,794 pounds. It does not have any wiring in the car, or dashboard, heating, air conditioning. It's got one seat in it and a steering column, and it's pretty well gutted. It does still have all the glass and window regulators though, so there might be some place to shave some weight there. We'll be looking for it. I pulled the exhaust off the car, didn't bother to weigh it. We will need some kind of exhaust. The engine weight, next big part. The Subaru engine with turbo, fully dressed, with alternator and power steering pump, exhaust, all of that, weighed right at 300 pounds. This chunk of metal, with everything that you saw on it earlier, fully loaded, was 440. People say these are 300 and some pounds. Doesn't seem that way. Not in the 330, 340 range I was told. However, the motor mounts alone were 15 pounds, and those were big monsters. They got to go. Air conditioning compressor, that's got some weight to it. And the exhaust manifolds, I'm leaving them on right now because I want to be able to look at where they're pointing when I get this down there. See, right now it's pointing right at the steering shaft. So that's going to be something I'll leave on right now, but we might be doing headers, something to save some weight there. So anyway, so as it stands, this is where I'm at. I will try to get back to this and give you an update on how I'm going to fix that problem. I think I'll make that the next video. In the meantime, the adapter plate and flywheel, I have ordered them. And there's some guys in Australia that Subaru Gears that seem to have everything I need for that. A great lightweight flywheel and a plate. It's 28 millimeters. I was hoping for 25. Nothing ever does. But that will be shipped when they get it built. It's a build to order. They said 6 to 8 weeks. So there's going to be a while before this actually gets bolted to that transmission. In the meantime, it appears I've got a whole lot of other things to work out. Suspension geometry, steering rack, oil pan. Yeah, there's a long list. But here's where we sit now with the rat fink sticking out the hood. not what I'm looking for. We're going to see if we can't get this center of gravity way down. And I'm motivated. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back. I'm not monetized, I'm not sponsored, I'm not anything. I'm just me, and I'm posting this for fun. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.